Are you ready, Governor?
Everyone here had better buy a ticket to my fundraiser. These funds are my funds, these funds aren't your funds. I get to spend them the way I want to, and you can pass all the bills you want because these funds were meant to be spent by me. These funds are my funds, these funds. I went walking past the people asking for money to feed their children. I walked right past them and gave out contracts. These funds were meant to be spent by me. These funds are my funds, these funds. For outsiders, I don't like them. They did not donate to my election. I see business closing. That will teach them when you ask me to help them. I'll say you did not donate to me. These funds.
What do you want to do for the bridge?
I don't know. Do you have an empty hotel for rent? Or maybe some cheap golf carts you can sell me for twice the price? With business dying and owners crying and their workers on corners begging, pull was over with people desperate and despondent. To the quickest, I give all rice checks. There's an election, I think I'll buy it. You'll never know until you try it. I'm not worried because I own the bank and these funds were meant to be spent by me. These funds were meant to be spent by me.
Good afternoon and welcome to Thursday's Point of View. I'm Ken Leon-Guerrero, and today we're going to look back at the last couple of days because this has been a great day for talk radio, a bad day for democracy, which is also great for talk radio and shows like this. Now, for some reason, Governor Leon-Guerrero is afraid of the primary election, as it has stood in the past, and with good reason. The last time she was in a primary, she barely won. She won by 218 votes. And if I had been successful in my lawsuit at getting the damaged or invalidated votes examined and counted, she might have even lost back then. Water under the bridge. We're now at 2022. We are now at another primary election, and the news around the island that's got everybody talking is the fact that the governor and her brain trust, or as I say, lack of brain trust, have all conspired to alienate about 95% of the registered voters of Guam. And that's why I say this. For decades, ever since we've been electing politicians, we've been running pretty much an open primary system. And every year, Maria Pangilinan of the Guam Election Commission sends a letter to the political parties and asks them a question. Do you want to run an open primary or a closed primary? And every year, the politicians tell her they want an open primary. And the reason they want an open primary is because if there's a closed primary limited to party members, not the public, then there's a real strong possibility that the politicians would have to pay for it. And as we know, politicians don't like to pay for anything out of their own pocket when they can use our pockets to pay for it. So, under the new edict, a group of politically well-connected Democratic insiders, most of them appointed by Leon-Guerrero to the Democrat Committee or Executive Committee, met and decided to change the rules this year. For the first time in the history of Guam, we're running a closed primary limited only to registered Democrats. Now, earlier I said that this move is going to alienate about 95% of the people of Guam, registered voters, and here's why. According to the records at the Guam Election Commission, only 6% of Guam voters indicated a political party choice. In other words, 4% of registered voters as of 2020 selected Democrat, 2% selected Republican, leaving 94% of voters undocumented or independent. So under these latest rules that have been put forward by the Leon-Guerrero Tenorio administration, right now, if it stands as we're hearing, about 2,500 Democrats will be authorized to vote in this year's primary election. That doesn't sound very democratic. That's why I am now dubbing the Democratic Party of Guam the undemocratic Party of Guam. And the reason is, whenever you have a political party working hard to limit access to the voting booths, the voting ballots by a majority of the citizens, that is voter suppression. And oddly enough, that's what Republicans are being accused of all over the United States, enacting laws to make it more difficult for the type of people to vote that traditionally vote Democrat. Well, now we have a situation here on Guam where the Democrats are instituting rules to make it difficult for Democrats to vote for Democrats. Now, why is that? By creating this artificial barrier where Democrat voters only are going to be allowed to cast a ballot, it appears to be the hope of the Leon-Guerrero Tenorio administration to limit people's ability to vote to one candidate in particular. That candidate, of course, being the sitting governor, Leon-Guerrero. Because if her information from the numerous polls out there in the field matches up with the anecdotal information that I've been receiving as a community advocate and also as a Republican candidate who's been going around to different events and venues talking to hundreds of people and hearing who they prefer as governor, and I'm sure Governor Leon-Guerrero is hearing the same thing, that if the election were held today, Mike St. Nicholas would win in a landslide. So now she has to determine, how do I prevent Mike St. Nicholas from winning the primary in a landslide? Well, the obvious choice is, let's limit who can vote. Now, for those of you who've been following me for years, you know that for the past 6 or 8 years, I have been trying to get legislation passed in the legislature to eliminate the primary election. And we get a number of senators who say they're interested in eliminating the primary election. When the Action PAC stood up last election, one of their key questions to candidates they endorsed was eliminating the primary election and part-time legislature. And a lot of senators said that they were in favor of it, but so far we haven't seen anything towards that effect. In fact, in the last bill that was passed by the legislature, or introduced in the legislature, as we can see, 9-4. So politicians definitely are proving with this vote they are more concerned about their financial security than they are your financial security. And like I said, every election Maria Pangilinan sends out the letter, and every year the political parties say that we can't afford it, so let's have an open election, except for this year. This was the political cartoon that the Pacific Daily News ran the last time bill was introduced in the legislature to eliminate the primary election. So recently we've had Tony Babauta, the chairman of the Democratic Committee, on news media talking about did we lose the video, the slide? Okay, there we go. As always, here with an amateur broadcaster, my technology gets ahead of me sometimes. So let's hear Tony Babauta try to explain how Democrats are going to use this new rule.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that, Reed. I know that since the news last night of the Central Executive Committee making its decision, that kind of everyone's trying to figure out, okay, well, what does the GEC do? What does the Democratic Party do? What do I do if I'm a registered voter and I'm not sure if I'm affiliated? What if I'm a Republican? I want to vote in the Democratic primary. Those questions still have to be sorted out. I honestly don't know all of them, but we are going to meet with the Guam Election Commission this week to be partners with them in planning for this upcoming primary election season. And our goal is to try and ensure that there are no barriers that would prevent anyone who wants to participate in the Democratic Party primary to be able to do so. And really that goes for kind of really goes for everyone, right? We want to make sure that anyone who wants to participate in the primary election can do so obviously under the rules of the recognized political parties, because the Republicans have their own rules, and their rule does not call for a closed primary, it calls for an open primary. But we want to make sure that everyone participates not only in the primary election, and for my part, it would be registering the greatest number of Democrats that we can get to participate in the primary election and kind of revitalize and re-energize and let our registered Democrats feel the power of that vote in their selection of the best candidate they feel that will bring the party's ideals to the general election. But then the overall scope of it, of course, is to get as many people involved in this election so that at the general election, both all Republicans, Democrats, and independents are making that final choice of both Republican Party candidates and Democratic Party candidates to serve in elected office for whatever term they are vying for, either a 4-year term or a 2-year term, and those will ultimately be the decision makers that are elected by the entire electorate on the law.
Okay, did you get that? Let me see if I can recap it. They want the maximum number of people to participate in the democratic process, but they only want people who've already signed up and declared themselves to be Democrats. Probably they're going to require a DNA test or something, or have you flash your Democrat card as you go walking in to vote or something. They still haven't figured out, but this process somehow, by limiting participation in the Democratic primary, is supposed to ensure that the maximum number of people can exercise their rights. I don't understand a thing he says. But one thing he did say that I take objection to, that he's talking about the democratic ideals. And after 10 years of monitoring political parties here on Guam, I can tell you without fear of contradiction, there are no democratic ideals, there are no Republican ideals. The Democrats and Republicans here on Guam, they wear a shirt. The blue shirts are the Democrats, the red shirts are the Republicans, because neither party expresses a platform that has anything to do with reality. Because if the Democratic Party platform had any semblance with what he just said, then we would be looking at something like taking care of our people, understanding that the people of Guam are struggling hard, they're struggling financially. We're in the midst of a rising inflation rate that is damaging families. And if you don't believe me, go to the grocery store and look at the shell-shocked faces of shoppers as they're walking around trying to fit food in their limited budget. I feel the same way myself. I just went shopping the other day, and where normally I would have 5 or 10 bags for my budget, I had 3. One bag, which normally would have been about $25 to $30, was $50. So the Democratic Party claims that they're concerned about the welfare of our people, yet we haven't seen anything in this administration to prove that. But I'm getting away from myself. Let's go back to what Tony has to say. Let's have Tony try to explain the new system to a Democratic voter and see how that goes.
And that came after a pretty full discussion, and hopefully the members of the Central Executive Committee felt that I gave enough opportunity for them to exhaust all questions or concerns or feelings that they wanted to express on the matter that was at hand. In no way do I control those votes, and I think with respect to being able to nominate the Central Executive Committee, they do not nominate the representatives of the party. That again, in this election and in future elections, unless the unless the CEC decides to change it, that will be decided at the Democratic Party at a primary election on the Democratic ballot with the participation of registered Democrats to the party.
Okay, Bill?
He's basically saying that, yes, the people of the respective Democrats that he's, I'm a Democrat, I vote Democrat.
Okay.
Am I allowed
Appreciate
to vote in the primary election? Or am I not because my name is not on your list?
I didn't catch that. Could you say that one more time? Are you allowed to what?
I'm a Democrat. Am I allowed to vote on this election, this primary election? Or am I
Absolutely.
not because I'm not a registered on your list? A
No,
registered Democrat.
If you are a registered Democrat, if during your registration to become an elector or a voter that participates in Guam elections, and you chose, there's a line on the registration form that's an optional line for you to fill in what you want to affiliate with, either a Republican or a Democrat, or if you just want to put independent. I think you can just leave it blank as well. If you chose that you want to be affiliated with a Democrat, then you are considered a registered Democrat, and you can participate in the upcoming primary election. Absolutely.
And if I chose to leave that blank, I'm not allowed to vote?
If you chose to become what?
If I chose not to identify my party affiliation at the election commission, I'm not allowed to vote at this election for a Democrat of my choice?
The Democratic Party election, the Democratic candidates, the victors of that primary election, will be chosen by registered Democrats who are participating in the Democratic primary.
Okay.
Then you are suppressing the voters. You're basically saying only those that you welcome, per se, will vote. Only those people.
Bill, I welcome everyone to become a Democrat. We are a big tent party. I welcome everyone to become a Democrat. And I think if you share values of the Democratic Party, equity, social justice, choice, higher wages, protecting workers, protecting working families, trying to expand the middle out, if you believe in those things and you find candidates in the Democratic Party side that you want to root for and that you want to support, we invite you to join the party, and we invite you to come and participate in the election of where Democrats send the best of the best candidates out of our primary election to the general election to be presented to the entire electorate.
Okay, Tony. So I did not identify myself as a Democrat when I went and registered to be a voter here on Guam. Do I go back now and re-register, and say I'm a Democrat so that I can vote during this primary?
I don't know if the term re-register is correct. Like I was sharing with Tony earlier, we are going to meet with the Guam Election Commission this week, and we are going to try and work hand in hand with them to meet the order of the court that was handed down by Judge Lamorena. I want the Guam Election Commission to work as quickly as possible and to lower any barriers for registration, for the new registration of voters, whether they choose to be Democrat, Republican, or Independent. I think we need to make sure that process is as easy for people to be able to participate in Guam's elections. And then more importantly for me, and wearing my Democratic hat, if there are people that want to affiliate themselves with the Democratic Party or just want to confirm that they have already chosen the Democratic Party as their affiliation, I hope that the Guam Election Commission will work with us to make that the easiest way possible. Okay. Understanding also that you need to verify folks' identity and that sort of thing. We want to make sure it's a solid process, but we want to lower all barriers and welcome everyone into the electoral process.
Okay, Bill?
Okay.
All right, thanks, Bill. Well, let me...
Did you get all that? Because as I'm listening to Tony about to try to explain this, it occurs to me that he probably hasn't thought this out, because he's saying that he doesn't think you're going to have to go back and re-register, that they're going to work out with the Guam Election Commission some way of identifying it. It's going to go back to the loyalty pledge. People wanting to vote in the Democratic primary are probably going to have to stand on a Bank of Guam checking account checkbook, raise their right hand, and swear allegiance to Leon-Guerrero in order to be allowed to vote. That's the way it sounds like to me, and I'm probably overthinking it. I really am. But it shows how bad this primary election process is. That is why for 8 years I have been trying to introduce legislation to eliminate this process with no luck. That is why I started the voter initiative process that we're working through. We've completed the first step. We're working on the second step, and once we submit our paperwork, we have 2 more steps to do. I'll get more into that later. Or you can go to the video library here at Candid and look at VIP. Do a Google search for VIP or go to the Guam Citizens for Public Accountability page, and you'll see the videos there on the voter initiative. But let's get back to this. Here is why I've been fighting the primary election for so long. It's a very, very extravagant waste of money. When we look at the fact that over the past four elections, now 2020 we didn't have a primary, but over 4 elections we eliminated a total of 7 candidates for the legislature at a cost of $2 million. Think about that. Taxpayers spent $2 million to eliminate a total of 7 candidates. So to bring it down from 32 or 33 to 30, $500,000, we could have spent $500,000 on something of much greater value to the community. We could have bought 10 drug detection dogs and used those drug detection dogs to help interdict the easy flow of meth onto our island. We could have used the $500,000 just 1 year, and we could have run a spay and neuter clinic to help dramatically reduce the explosive growth of stray dogs on this island that make walking in our villages dangerous for adults and children. We could have spent $500,000 buying, dare I say it, laptops for our children so that during the time of COVID they would have better laptops. I mean, we could have done a lot more things with $2 million than eliminate 7 candidates from the legislature. And there's another problem. As you can see here, hold this slide for a second. What we're looking at is the 2 election process discourages voters. It just wears on voters, and we see that nearly half the voters don't even participate in the primary election. So when we look at our low voter numbers to begin with, and half of those voters who do register don't vote in the primary, it shows what a useless exercise it is in building our democracy stronger. One of my favorite authors is, go back to the slide there, is Hunter S. Thompson. A little education for those of you not familiar with Hunter S. Thompson, although many of you may have seen movies made from his books. He's famous for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which was one of his breakthrough books. But what he's also written, what I call one of the best books on politics ever, is Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail on the 72 national elections. And what he did there is he got into deep inside the campaigns and looked at them from, in my world, Troy Torres is a clone of Hunter S. Thompson, because Troy Torres approaches the story much the same way Hunter Thompson did, and my favorite quote from Hunter Thompson is this: "When the going gets weird, the weird turn pro." And that definitely describes what is happening in the Democratic primary this year. It is definitely a weird situation. So, what are our options? Now, there have been some options floating around. I actually have a little bit of experience dealing with options to a primary election, having led the write-in campaign for Frank Uggan in 2018. So there are challenges, and as you can see here at the bottom, we were able to get nearly 8,000 voters, or 22% of the voters, to participate in the write-in campaign. And had we had a little more time and a little more money, we probably would have won that election. But here's where the reindeer games come in. Right now, the Democratic Party is playing reindeer games with their primary election, and their goal is to minimize the number of people that can vote, because they realize that the more people vote, more people are going to vote for Mike Nicholas, and that's something they want to prepare. So here we are, a situation that leads itself to some interesting ideas, because when we look at the Republican ballot, what if those of you who want to vote Republican, but you are not happy with the Camacho Ada team, what if you wrote Mike SN and Bree MS in the write-in campaign? And then you could continue to vote for your favorite Republicans. Now, the reason I bring this up is because if the Democrats are going to play games with the primary that limit our vote, then why don't we play games with the political parties and teach them a lesson they won't soon forget? When they tamper with a process, that gives us the opportunity as voters to tamper with it as well. Because if I like Mike Nicholas and I vote for Mike Nicholas on the primary side of the ticket and then turn the page over and vote for my favorite Republicans, that vote is invalidated. If I were to vote for Mike Nicholas on the Democrat side and then turn it over and vote for somebody else, that vote is invalidated. And so my conspiracy theory thinking is, if they're trying to push Mike to run as an independent, then their thinking is that if they check Mike's name for independent and then they turn around and vote for their favorite Democrats, then Mike's votes get eliminated. But also a lot of Democrats are going to get eliminated as well. So there's a double-edged sword on this. But by doing this as a write-in campaign, and bear in mind this is just my idea here, me speaking to you as voters who are tired of politicians playing games with us, what if we, as voters who determined that we wanted to have good governance, and we decided that since Mike Nicholas has been consistent in serving the people of Guam first compared to the other teams in the field right now, what if we those of you who want to vote on the Democrat side wrote in. Let me go down here. Oops. Yeah, here we are. We'll start on the Republican side. What if you those of you who want to vote Republican, but you're not happy with the ticket on the top for whatever reason? You could write in Mike Nicholas without invalidating your vote. And that way, Mike Nicholas will be counted as a legitimate vote, even though it's on the Republican side of the primary. And then you could continue to support your favorite Republican candidates. There are quite a few. I will be one of them, full disclosure. But this is the Point of View show, not a campaign show. And then for those of you who are on the Democrat side, you could, now bear in mind 2018 ballot, I'm just using this for an example. So on the Democrat side, you could write in Mike Nicholas and Bree MS, and that would be a legitimate vote for Mike and Bree on the Democrat side, and you could continue to support those Democrats in the legislation that you want to support for the 37th Guam legislature. So this way, even if Mike ran as an independent, he has to get so many votes. He has to get twice as many votes as Lou will have to get as a Democrat or Felix will have to get as a Republican. That's just the way the laws are written against the possibility of an independent candidate succeeding. But in my idea, if Mike ran as an independent, then we as voters have a choice. We could take a ticket and we could vote right in for Mike and then continue to vote for our Democrats, or we could pull a Republican ticket and write in for Mike and Bree and vote for our Republicans, because there's not going to be very many senators willing to run as an independent. So that's why I see this as a unique opportunity for the voters of Guam to play reindeer games with politicians, because we don't need their permission to write them in on the Democrat side or the Republican side of the ticket, and they will be legitimate votes, and they will be counted. And at the end of the day, when the Guam Election Commission primary comes out, they're going to rank number 1 Republican, number 1 Democrat, and number 1 write-in. And that's where the people of Guam will win. That's why I started the voter initiative process, to take these games out of our calculation, because life on Guam is hard. It's getting harder. And we need leaders in our legislature who are going to represent the people of Guam for a change, and we need a leader at the top in Adelup that's going to represent Guam for a change. We have seen over the past 3 years that this administration isn't going to represent the people of Guam. They haven't. And we've had 16 years of Republican professional politicians at the top of the ticket, and they haven't done a better job than the Democrats have. So maybe, Einstein's definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So let's do something different. I'm tossing it out here the way I held a news conference on Labor Day right after the primary election in 2018, when my good friend Andre Bynum and I stood together there in Angel Santos Memorial Park and announced that we were spearheading a write-in campaign for Frank Uggan. Well, I'm calling on each and every one of you out there to take the initiative into your hands. Take it out of the political party's hands. You guys decide who you want to run for office. What a novel concept. Democracy at work at the lowest common denominator. Why don't we, as voters, write in at the top in the write-in campaign who we, the voters, would like to see run for office? And if, like I said, if those of you who have a lot of people you want to see on the Democrat side get in, write in Mike and Bree on the Democrat. And for my Republican friends who want to see a strong Republican majority in the legislature, and we all know from watching Mike over the years, he's more of a Republican in his way, a traditional Republican in his way of thinking. So write in Mike Nicholas and Bree Montanani Salas on the Republican side. And let's see how that game works out, because it's kind of, in my opinion, having watched politics here now for 15 years, been a player in the game for 15 years, as a community advocate, this would probably be the best thing to happen for the people of Guam, because if we vote in, through the write-in process, Mike Nicholas and Sabrina, we take control of our government, returning it, taking it away from being a government of politicians, by politicians, for politicians. With our write-in vote, we make it a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a great way to go. Now, for those of you who have not registered, you can register online. You can go online and check your registration, or you can call in and they'll check your registration for you. Because remember, we had almost 9,000 people deleted in January 2019. So if you are going to help make Guam a better place, the way you do that is making sure you are registered to vote and then vote, because it's up to us. We've got 24 years of politicians proving they are incapable of taking care of the people of Guam. It's time that we exert ourselves and have politicians fear voters for a change. I'm Ken Leon-Guerrero. This is my point of view, and I just want you to remember to think right in, right on.